What if you haven't missed your chance to be elite? You are listening to the Mindset Forge podcast, where I interview athletes and performing artists on how they show up for the biggest moments of their sport, their craft, and life itself. Today, I've got such a great story. It's a local Austin lady. Her name is Cheryl Carrell. And just like a lot of us, at 30 years old, she had the normal concerns and issues about wanting to lose weight after a baby. And she really just wanted to find a place where she felt comfortable working out. And fast forward 10 years, she is now an elite athlete on all levels, doing Camp Gladiator, CG games, doing Hyrox competitions, doing Spartan team challenges on TV, like everything. And she's going to talk about her story, what she's gone through, her mindset shifts throughout the process of her just starting fitness with Camp Gladiator 10 years ago to where she is today, and how you might take some of those ideas and get started yourself. So without further ado, buckle up, get ready. Here's my interview with Cheryl Carrell.
I was a gymnast as a young kiddo, from age really 10 to 13. I was competitive, and I have a plate and screws in my arm, and my team went some different directions. My coaches were moving and stuff was changing. And so I kind of had to make the decision and ended up quitting. And I coached for several years, but that was it. That ended my career, and I didn't ever do any other competitive sports at all through high school or college or anything like that.
Wow.
And then I got married young, and I had 4 kiddos pretty quickly by the time I was 30. And really, during all of that space in my life, I was active. I was always an active person, but never really prioritized specifically fitness. I do a Pilates video here or there. I do a little 5K with a friend, which I kind of hated. I just hated running. It felt so just aimless to me because I didn't really have intention, I guess, with it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I guess when I was pregnant with my 4th kiddo, a friend was telling me about Camp Gladiator, who you are very familiar with, and it looked awesome. It was actually Lisa Hinkey. I don't know if you know her.
Yeah, of course.
Well. But I knew
That's
her.
an
I've known
elite
her since
family.
I was a baby, like my whole life. And so I just saw her working for it. It looked awesome. And then another friend was doing it, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm pregnant, and I haven't been doing anything. I probably shouldn't jump into a boot camp right now, maybe after the baby's born. And then this friend was like, hey, there's this $4 birthday special. It's only $4 for the whole month. And I was like, I mean, if I just go once or twice, I'll get some at-home workout ideas, And after the first week, I went to Brandon Brickley's camp, and his just personality is so welcoming and warm, and I felt like I was part of a team right away, right off the bat. And I went in with the mindset of I'm just going to go for a day or two, maybe a week or two. And I totally fell in love. And I went home and told my husband, I was like, oh my gosh, I need this in my life. So I was in the middle of a season of just really hardship. My dad unexpectedly had just passed away in the summer. So timeline, it was about July, and my dad had passed away. It was really shocking. None of us were expecting it. It was very traumatic.
How old was he?
He was 67.
Okay.
And it was heart failure. He was never really healthy physically, and then also mentally had a lot of things going on that he just didn't ever deal with. And so then I guess it was just a little over a month after that I had my baby. My 4th kiddo was born. And then it was another 7 weeks after that I started the boot camp. And I wasn't really putting it all together at the time, but later someone was asking me, why am I doing this? And what does it mean to me that I'm, pouring effort and putting time into fitness and working out now? And looking back, I realized that I kind of didn't want to end up where my dad was. I wanted to be a better role model for my kids. I wanted to set myself up for success as much as I could when it came to health and wellness. Yeah. And be able to model that for my children and also just my friends too. So,
well, take us back to the mindset you had just in that, just signing up for the boot camp and not knowing if this was, because I think that's important. I think it's important to understand that even though now, 10 years later, you are, competing in these high level events, that at some point you had a pretty, maybe a typical mindset of somebody who's struggling with just getting started.
Literally
so talk about
everything.
that.
Yeah. Body image. I definitely didn't ever really focus or think too much about body image other than just I need to lose some baby weight or, things like that. I would work enough I would try to eat healthy enough or think about like walking or being active with my kids enough that I would sort of lose baby weight-ish, but I was never like strong or fit or, you know, that kind of thing. And I just wanted to get my body back. After my fourth kid, I just kind of felt like I had fallen apart, especially in my core. And when I came out to camp, I felt so intimidated. I wore baggy t-shirts. I literally had like baggy cotton shorts. Thinking back on it, it's really funny. And when new people come, my heart just goes straight to them. I walk over and I'm welcome. And because that's how, I mean, that's why I stayed, because somebody did that for me. Somebody walked over and encouraged me. I couldn't run a fast lap. I couldn't do a push-up from my toes. I couldn't do sit-ups. I couldn't do anything when I started. And I think, you know, I'll summarize probably with this again at the end, but for me, like, it always comes back to just that habit forming, and like consistency is key. We all want a quick fix. We want something that's just going to like bounce us back, you know, and it just doesn't work that way. There's no guarantees, and everything is going to take time and effort and sacrifice. And we just have to figure out our priorities and what we can fit in and what we can make space for, you know, so.
And that's your perspective from 10 years later,
right.
You know, looking back at all the work you've put in. But do you remember maybe one of the early like mindset shifts you had as you started to develop a habit and you started to feel differently?
Yeah, I think early on, I guess it was after the first few weeks, my husband and I both were like, okay, yes, you do need this in your life. I really probably needed therapy too, but it was my therapy at the time. And so I was like, it's cheaper than therapy. And he's like, yes, go, keep working out. And just having that like-minded community where I had other people that were working for similar goals, kept me motivated and coming out when I felt like I couldn't do it. If I was at my own house, I would not have done the next sit-up or the next push-up or tried this other harder thing that I'd never done before. It was having someone next to me saying, you know, you can do this, just one more rep, or my coach telling me, you've got this, just fix your form like this and you're going to be able to do it better, and that kind of thing. That slow growth process that just takes time. But again, being in that community setting for me was a big game changer, both accountability as well as just encouragement.
How long do you think it took you before you didn't need that? Like you became the voice in your head that was like one more, and I'm not afraid of the pain that's coming.
That's a really good question. I've always been a pretty competitive person, so I think I probably took that on fairly early, but yet at the same time, it's hard to even think back. I was so sleep deprived at the time. But I would say somewhere in the first 6 to 12 months for sure. But it wasn't like in that first week, you know?
Yeah.
Probably in the first 6 to 12 months. Funny story. So let's see, timeline. I started in October. Actually, this October is going to be my 10th year since I started like my fitness part of my life. So that's really fun. Little anniversary. And if I started October, and it was July, I think, of the next year that I had my first CG Games prelims. I wasn't planning on it, but Brandon
talked you
my
into
coach,
it.
He was like, "Hey,
shout out to
you
Brandon
guys should
Brickley.
be a little team here," and so he put me and 3 other girls on a team. We were called the Last Minute Ladies because we signed up literally like probably at the last second week of, you know, and I went out and did it. And then actually we qualified for finals, but we didn't even know what that meant. We didn't know what finals was. And my other teammates were kind of like, I don't want to pay for another thing or do another thing. I'm done. Like, that's all I wanted to do. Yeah. So we went to finals and I watched it. And oh my gosh, that lit the fire under me for like, I want to do this. Yeah. And I think that was my first like, wow, this could go somewhere. Like I could do something more than just show up in a parking lot and work out. I could actually compete or just have something to work toward. For me, having a goal, whatever that is in life, whether it's in you know, marriage and parenting and friendship and whatever kind of relationship or thing I'm doing in life, having those goals so that, you know, you can just reach a milestone instead of it just kind of being this like aimless, I don't know, just showing up versus like, okay, I have an intention to work toward.
Well, and I think no matter how difficult something is, at some point it becomes normal.
Right.
And the difficulty of just showing up at 5 a.m. for a workout is not hard anymore. And yeah, you can push yourself a little bit harder. But if you go to CG Games finals and watch all these athletes do these crazy things, I remember I was there because I started 10 years ago too as a trainer with Camp Gladiator. And so I remember watching all these athletes running
with
the
O
course
and everything,
and doing all these crazy things.
Sand.
Yeah. And thinking like, wow, like this is next level. But then that fired you up and said, hey, there's another level that I can go.
I'm going to be here next year. Like, absolutely. So I have been. I've done it every year since. Except for COVID, I didn't do the virtual year, but I've done it every year except for that.
You didn't miss much. Yeah, but I just think that's so crucial. It's like I was just talking to somebody who got to meet Cameron Haynes, who's an elite ultramarathon runner, and he ran a mountain with him, like over lunch break. And he talks about that moment as like the pivotal moment in his fitness career, and like just being around a guy at such a high level. I think there are moments in our lives where we see something like CG Games finals and seeing that competition and saying, and that fire gets sparked, or we meet somebody or something happens, and we either choose to like run in that direction or we shy away from it. And so I think that's so often, as I'm interviewing you, you've come from just starting Camp Gladiator as a mom who just wants to lose a little bit of baby weight and start moving to, doing Hyrox and all these elite competitions around the country with Eddie and these partner competitions. And somewhere you decided to keep saying yes, and I think so much of a mindset that we can adopt is that ability to keep saying yes to yourself, to the challenges of life. So talk about that, just like over the course of the last 10 years, some things that you remember thinking, I said yes to that, and that was a big deal.
Yeah, so that's a good thing to kind of evaluate, I guess. I think when you say yes to something, you say no to something else often. And so figuring out how to prioritize what are the things that are in the best interest of, for me, I have a lot of people to consider. I have my husband, I have 4 children, and I have a lot of different circumstances in my life that I'm a part of. And so I never want it to be, I always say this, I want whatever I choose to not be to the detriment, but to the benefit of all of the things that I have to think about. So not just myself, but all of these people, right? So when I'm choosing it, I want my kids to see that I can put forth effort into something and reach a goal, but also they have to know that they're important to me and that I can't sacrifice them over that, right? So it's that constant balance of, where is my mindset? Like, am I making something an idol to me, or is there a good balance? So I feel like there's that constant, I wake up each day and I'm like, okay, is everything in as good of a balance as it can be? So that's just, I don't know, kind of an interesting way. So when I say yes, I'm thinking about, okay, what else am I saying no to?
Yeah.
And is it going to be in the best interest of all of these things in my life? So as I've been able to say yes to fitness, my husband has been so supportive and really awesome because he sees how it has helped me thrive emotionally, physically, and be able to pour into my family, because I have some place where I'm being filled. And so then when I'm giving, we're homeschooling and we do so many other things too, I'm constantly pouring into other things. To be filled before you go fill somebody else up is a lot easier than if you're empty. And, you know, so that doesn't always mean sleep for me. That's probably like my worst thing. I don't ever sleep enough, but we won't talk about that. But I have learned how important it is to say yes to recovery, to say yes to nutrition, to say yes to resting, even my mind. There's just so many pieces and factors than just, I said yes to show up to this competition and work toward that one goal. There's a lot more behind the scenes that goes into that, I guess.
Yeah. When I think as you get to that more elite level, you realize that like one extra day of recovery or one little thing that you do, that little extra percentage of benefit to you could be the difference.
Right.
And how your mind functions when you're in the day of the race or the event. And it's like those little minutia of decisions that you start making. Whereas back in the day, it was just like show up.
Right.
Like that
Absolutely.
was the only decision.
Like just make
get
it
out
off
of
the
bed.
I know. I always tell people, I'm like, fill your water bottle, set out your shoes. Like people say, set your intention for the day. For me, I got to set it the night before so that I can still follow through with it on the next day. Yeah. So.
Yeah. But I think that's the joy of the journey. I mean, I think as you get good at the basic things of just showing up well, and then what are these little things? Could I get a little bit better sleep the night before something? How could I think about my nutrition differently, or my hydration, or all those little things? And it just kind of opens up this world of like, how can I really maximize my potential.
Right.
And I feel like you've done that. Like
I
you've
think
really
there's something to be
maximized it.
said about like you never arrive. There's something in our mind when we're kids where we think I'm going to get to this point and I will have arrived. I'm going to graduate college. I'm going to get married. I'm going to have this, job. Whatever the thing is, I will have arrived at that point. And it's like, no, you're just in a new phase. There's just a new phase and a new season. And there's something really hard and something really amazing in every season. And so I think for me, it's that mindset of choosing joy, because not everything's going to be easy. Not everything's going to be happy. But how can I find growth opportunities, and whether it's really hard and I'm learning from the hard thing that I'm going through, and that could be fitness or that could be just, emotional or whatever in your personal life. And then how am I going to use that to fuel me going forward so that I'm always growing, so that there's never like a stagnant place where I just am like, okay, well, I don't know, this is too hard, I give up, right? So for me, it's that daily waking up and kind of dying to my selfish desires and like, okay, today God's given me another day. Here I am. I'm breathing. I have all these people that I love that I have the opportunity to have in my life. And how can I, use that to the best ability that I have? So,
Yeah. So you mentioned the word idol. Like, am I making it an idol versus a talk about that? Because I think that's a unique term, and I want you to expand, and I think there's more there.
Yeah. So it's an interesting mindset. I know I mentioned this to you before, but my faith is really important to me, and I feel like it's easy for us to idolize things that are to kind of put things on a pedestal that shouldn't be there. That we can just work towards something that is maybe either I don't know, like talk to somebody who's won the Olympics and it's like, okay, so what's next,
Right.
So for me, I have won I can't talk. I have won CG games several times. I have been able to podium in several neat races and have a lot of really awesome opportunities over these last 10 years. And I think it's that balance of enjoying the experience, learning from that experience, riding the high while you're on it. And then, okay, what's next? Like, I'm still just a wife and a mom and a friend and a daughter, and I have all these other responsibilities in my life. That wasn't the end all be all. So while it was an awesome opportunity and a great growth opportunity, and hopefully I could inspire somebody else along the way, I also have to move forward and like, now what's next,
Yeah.
And so I can't let that be my idol of like just winning. Because what if I don't? Like, what if I have a bad day? What if I show up and every time I am 4th or 2nd or 18th or, whatever, am I still going to show up? And so I guess that the shift in the mindset of like, is that the end goal versus am I just going to do my best that day with what is in front of me?
So let's go deeper there, because I feel like, so if you put what I hear you saying is if you put all your kind of eggs in like, I have to get first place, I got to get gold or whatever that trophy kind of thing is, then anything less than that, it doesn't, it's unsatisfactory. Like, and you don't get to enjoy the process.
Right.
So what do you focus on to help you be super competitive and go for, put your best effort out there, but also have more of the holistic approach to the experience?
Yeah, I feel like it's something I'm constantly learning. I mean, you saw me at CG Games prelims this year. I had a lot of really hard circumstances personally that were going against me. I had an injury kind of flare up, and then several other just things, including like 3 hours of sleep the night before. Just not a lot of things setting me up
That's
for success.
par for the course, it sounds like.
Yeah, and so I had a goal time, even though it's just a prelims. It doesn't matter. It's just for my own personal self.
Yeah.
I had a time that I wanted to reach, and I didn't get it. I fell over a minute short, like slower than I was trying to get. And I was so bummed, almost wanted to cry. And I didn't, I held it all together. But actually, after I left, Eddie called me. He wasn't there that day. And I started crying whenever he asked how it went. And I was like, I didn't even know I needed to cry. But it was just a little minute. I needed to process. And then I was okay. But I just had to acknowledge that I was disappointed. I was frustrated that I didn't reach the goal that I had. But in the end, it didn't matter. It's going to fuel me to move forward to the next thing. But it was okay that I felt disappointed that I didn't reach the goal that I had. But then it's like, okay, now what? Now what do you do? How do you move forward with that? I did my best with the cards I was dealt on that day.
Yeah.
And I have to be okay with that, right? And so for me, it's that constant processing of the emotion of, I can acknowledge this thing that's either hard, sad, discouraging, or whatever, but don't camp there. Now I can move on and use that to fuel me toward the next thing. So I did qualify for finals. Now I can go and try to put that energy toward, doing better on that day. So.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me that, most people would just be trying to qualify for finals. Like you put a goal out, it's like a personal marker.
Right.
It's like, I want to get this time, which I think you could have, it probably would have been easier for you to say, I just want to qualify, because they took the top 60 and you probably were going to fall into there no matter how well you did. So anyway, I think that's interesting that you chose to motivate yourself with a personal goal versus like, hey, where do I stack up here across the nation with all of these women of my age?
I guess for me too, it's because in this particular race, I have done it so many years. I have different personal goals for different things that I do, I guess, you know. Whenever this past year, I actually competed with my teammate, Eddie Esparza. Shout out to also Hit Athletic. I have to talk about that here in a little bit.
We're hanging out at Hit Athletic right now.
Yes, oh my gosh.
Upstairs in the batting cages.
Amazing friend that I met through CG back in the day. Through our little home team at CG La Frontera in the parking lot. So he now owns this amazing facility and has let me train here with him. We have partnered up a couple times now over the past year for an event, a competition called Hyrox. It's one of the newer kind of up-and-coming races. That's a nationwide competition. It's international. Started in Germany. And this past year, we qualified for the World Championships and went to Vegas. And it was all people who had podiumed in the top 2 or 3 in their race. So when we went to that, it was kind of like a mini Olympics. That was the feel that they wanted it to be. It was so awesome. They had an opening ceremonies and stuff, and it felt really cool to be there. But we knew going into that race that we just wanted to run our best race. We weren't even trying to podium that day because we were going against everyone in the world.
Yeah.
And it would be awesome if we did. We were going to try to, but we were also not going to be super disappointed if we didn't. We just felt so honored to be there. So for me, I think it's situational what my goal is, right? Like we actually did run our best race at that race. We didn't podium, but that was okay. I didn't even feel disappointed that I didn't podium because we did our best, and it was a super awesome experience. Yeah. So all that to say, for me, it's situational where I set my goals, I think.
Yeah, that's a great realization. You've done CG games, prelims, 9 of the last 10 years, right? So you know it, and you know it very differently than you would know an event that you've just got into.
And even though they always have a different event, I always know about where I can stack up-ish in the CG community. So I set a personal goal.
So it's interesting. Like, I think the mindset that I'm taking away from that is like each event you do, you really should craft a goal that really resonates with where you are with that event. Like, if it's brand new or if it's something that you feel like, you know what, I actually can win this thing.
Right.
Like, I'm actually going to beat that guy or that lady or what, you know what I mean? Like, there's, you've got to figure out what the right motivator it is in that moment, because I think showing up and doing your best sometimes is exactly what you need to be focused on, but other times it might be more specific.
Exactly. Yeah.
So talk about the World Championships. You went to Vegas.
Oh my goodness, it was
World
such a cool
Championships. You and Eddie,
Yeah.
and just talk about some of the most amazing moments from that experience.
Yeah. Okay. So Hyrox is this newer race it's a standard race, and everyone does the same thing. So there's different categories. There's women's and men's, and then co-ed, and you can either do it individually or as a team. And depending on what you're doing, the weights are different. So there's an element, I guess there's 8 different stations that you do with a run in between. It ends up being a little over 5 miles worth of running, and 8 stations that are some mix of strength and cardio.
Okay. Is it a kilometer every lap? Is it about a kilometer?
I should know this. I don't know.
It's all right. Don't. So, and if you're listening, Kevin Richardson, who I interviewed in season 3, talked about Hyrox. And so, anyway, if you go back and listen to Kevin's, he also talks about this. But this is the one that has the rowing, the sleds,
rowing, sled push,
lots of burpees.
Yeah, I know. I could actually talk about two different races. So last year, our first time doing it. First of all, I decided to team up with Eddie because we have the same birthday. So that's a little fun
serious?
Fact. 5 years apart in age, but we have the exact same birthday, and so we always joke that we're like birthday buddies. And we're like, hey, we should do a race together sometime. And so this was the first thing that we did as a team last May, and then we qualified for the national championships, which is in Chicago. We ended up going, and at that that race, all sorts of craziness happened, including the fact that they ended up throwing all the co-ed teams into the pro men's weight, which we had all trained at the pro women's weight, because for the co-ed team, the women have to push and pull and carry all the things as well. So in the athlete's guide, that's what it had said. There was a mistake, and it was a whole thing. But all that to say, I ended up having to push.
So they messed up. They put the men's pro weight as opposed to like
the
having
co-ed team. So we all had to do the same thing. It wasn't just us. And we did still finish second place in that race. So, I mean, that was pretty awesome. But what was the most crazy thing is that it really tested our, we had to decide. So in the middle of the race was when we realized that we were going to have to run with these weights, pushing and pulling the heavy sleds, carrying these other things. That wasn't set up ahead of time that we knew we were supposed to do that. And so in the middle of the race, we had to make the decision, do we keep running this race that was not what we trained for? We came here, we sacrificed, we did all these things to get here. Do we just quit and walk off the field because we're mad that it's too hard and not what we came to do? Or do we risk possibly hurting our bodies because it's heavy to push and pull and carry these things we weren't expecting? Or do we just gut it out and do what we can with what, we're already here, might as well do it. And everyone else is in our same boat as far as the people we were competing with. So that was definitely one of the most challenging mindset things I've ever had to deal with. I mean, I've gone through some crazy stuff. I've, had 4 kids. That's hard enough, but just mindset wise. But that was definitely one of the most, just challenging in the moment kind of things that we had to do.
Well, you're so competitive and you're in this moment, and then like the rules change.
That's right.
That's so hard to pivot with.
We felt like the race that we came to run isn't what we ran. And so we were just like, what's even the point, So we definitely felt pretty discouraged during most of the race, but we stuck with it. We finished the whole thing. We did still end up finishing second, which was, pretty awesome. Considering the circumstances. And then afterwards, although we felt pretty broken and deflated because of it, we also felt so proud. Like, we just did that. Heck yeah, look at that hard weight we just pushed and pulled. And for me, I think that's one of the things about competition in general that I love is looking back after you've finished something, after you've completed it, wherever you stand, whether it was the first time you ever tried something or whether it was something where I podiumed, whether it was a terrible day or whether all the cards, fell into place and everything was great, looking back on it and going, wow, I did that. Like, my body, persevered through that whole day. My mind hung on through those dark places. And, I was able to push that, what I call the head trash, to the side and finish
the head trash.
Thing. Yeah. So we had a lot of head trash that day in Chicago. But then this year, we ended up doing a couple more races. So same thing with the Hyrox. So we did another qualifier in April, which I almost didn't know if I was going to be able to do because I had a knee injury that flared up and I did a lot of PT and no running for several months. And that is where HIIT really came to play for me, HIIT athletic, because I was just doing CG and I was running on the concrete constantly for 10 years. That's all I did. Well, 9 at that point, 5 to 6 days a week. And that was my home team. I was there every day. I'd show up in the mornings and hang out with my people. And I did all of my running and jumping on concrete pretty much. And so I think that just over the years, that was not the best for my body because of the level that I was pushing myself to, right? And so Eddie was like, you should come to the gym more and use the assault runner and the ski erg and the bike and these other options we have for cardio. And I was able to focus on some other areas of weakness and improve in different ways that I could grow as an athlete by using a gym space instead of just a parking lot space. And so that has been a really neat growth opportunity for me in this last 6 months, really just since January, that this has been a more consistent piece in my life. And so that's been pretty awesome too.
Yeah, and to think you've been this elite for 10 years or 9.5 years,
with
basically,
dumbbells in a parking
with just
lot?
dumbbells in a parking lot. So
I love it.
that's awesome. But
you're,
absolutely right. And I think it's also important for an athlete realizes and looks and say, where are my weak points? Where am I not at my best? Or where could I change things up and put myself out of my comfort zone? And sometimes the gym environment, I mean, down here you got the sleds, you got the assault bikes, assault runners, all that kind of stuff that you can utilize, take the pressure off your knee, but still develop your cardiovascular system and really find another level.
For sure. Yeah. And it's been fun for me to kind of have this shift of being a competitive athlete. And then also I've had over the years lots and lots of people coming to me for advice and ideas and how do I train for things. And eventually I got my training certification about 3 years ago, mostly because some of my favorite coaches within CG were always like, hey, can you sub for me? So Brandon and AJ and several of my great friends would be like, can you, just get that certification so you can help me out. And so I did, and it's been awesome and a blast. But I also got my nutrition certification this last year too, because that's been something I've been passionate about anyways. And then also something that people come to me for advice and ideas on a lot. And so it's been awesome to be able to kind of hone in a little bit more and be able to give more specific feedback to people. I'm actually working on launching my own business this fall with training and nutrition. So I'm super excited about that.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, I think when you walk the walk the way you have and really go from a place of like your dad passed away from, heart disease and you really didn't have a lot of like sports and fitness in your life until you decided to start Camp Gladiator. Like there was a huge crossroads moment, and a lot of people wouldn't have gone the direction you went. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people, it's tough for them to really see it through. Like the first time they feel their knee get a little, painful, and they pull back and they take a break or they fall off or whatever, they're not seeing results fast enough, they quit, and you didn't, and it's inspiring. Mm-hmm. And I think, I just love the fact that you could be anybody, right? Like you're not this person who like was an elite athlete all the way through high school and college, and and here you are in your 30s still doing it. Like it's something you found late in life and you went all into, and it's a story that could be everybody's story.
For sure.
In a way, and not to downplay what you've been able to
Absolutely.
do, but I think
I say it all the time. I always say that I'm not anybody special. I don't have anything different to offer than anybody else has. It's just that, like you keep talking about mindset shift. For me, it's like I just have to want it a little more than the other person. When I'm on the line, this is so silly. I say it all the time as an example because it's really true. But my very first year that I did individuals at CG Games and won, that money actually paid for one of my kids' braces.
Oh my God.
And so it totally, for me, I'm like, man, if I win this prize, it's actually going to help my family. It's not just like, I want to win. So I don't know, for me, when there's a goal that has something like that I can work toward that actually isn't just to do it. And now if I didn't win it, that would have been okay. It would have been a great experience still. But when I did, and then I was also able to use it, to help continuing my fitness journey, paying for that, and then also paying for my kids' braces and things like that. It's pretty awesome.
Well, I think there's so many stories of people who get tunnel vision. Like they get obsessed about exercise all of a sudden. They lose a bunch of weight and they get healthy, but maybe at the detriment of the people around them.
That's what I was talking about earlier, right?
Yes,
that
and
cost
I think
benefit.
Yeah, and I think that's another part of what your journey is really that highlights in your journey is the understanding that you're part of a family. You've got 4 kids that you need to consider. Like, is the choice I'm making to lean into fitness pulling me away from them, or how can I make it like a win for everybody?
Right, for sure.
And I mean, you can't know, but imagine not having found Camp Gladiator 10 years ago, and what your kids wouldn't know about life because they didn't see you go through this,
about it.
Right?
Yeah.
And what they know now because you've gone through this journey and they've watched you.
For sure.
And they're still, teenagers, and they probably still think mom's just kind of like, whatever.
They joke all the time. They're like, Mom, you're famous in CG. Like, they tell me that all the time. It's cute. But
well, you're kind of famous in Hyrox, and
it's fun. It's fun to have these experiences. Actually, this is another little fun fact, side note. I also love just obstacle course racing, and I only dabble in it here and there. I don't do it a ton. Again, for me, it's the time and the money. If I had more, I would do it more, but I always joke that I'm going to be like this 50-year-old competitive athlete when my kids are all in college. Maybe I really will. I'm not kidding.
When your 10-year-old becomes
that's right. Honestly,
18 and goes off to college.
I mean, he can do it with me in a couple of years. It's great. But what I was just saying is, sorry, lost my thought.
Obstacle course racing?
Yes, with Spartan. So I'd done a few here and there, but actually my original trainer, Brandon Brickley, and his family, and actually the founders of CG, their family, was going to apply to be on this show that was a reality TV show for a couple years called Spartan Ultimate Team Challenge. And Allie Davidson ended up getting pregnant and couldn't be one of the teammates. She was going to be on it. And then their other sister, Amanda, also found out she was pregnant like the day they were going to apply to be on the show. And so they're like, oh, great. Who do we we ask? Like, who can we ask? And so like the morning that they were going to send in their video to apply, they called me and they're like, hey, you want to be on this reality, or like, try to apply for this reality TV show with us? And I was like, well, I guess, like, what is this, And so anyways, the same day they asked me, we went up to the CG Arena headquarters and filmed our little application video and ended up making it onto the show. And they called us the underdogs, and it was fun. Actually, afterwards, we ended up talking to the producers several times because they didn't expect us to advance even past the first race. Mm-hmm. We were racing against like Robert Killian. He's one of the main names in obstacle course racing for a lot of years. He's an amazing, amazing athlete. And we ended up competing against Olympians and all these really super cool people who I've gotten to meet and know and follow on social media and stuff now that I didn't even know who they were then, or I probably would have been way more intimidated. But I'm glad I didn't know on the front end, but now I do. And I've made some really cool friends because of it. But yeah, we made it all the way to the finals. And Joey ended up tearing his shoulder, and that we got a sub and ended up finishing second in that. But it was really a cool experience.
And I got a chance to watch that entire season and just go through that journey with you guys and watch that. And I think that was so, I think the key word in that whole reason why you probably did so well was team.
For sure.
Great Olympic athletes or, these Spartan racers or whatever, but like you guys worked together and had a kind of a camaraderie and energy that like nobody else had, and it just shined on TV.
I've been on so many teams now, which I love. So it's been interesting too, as a competitor. I've done both individual and team. Both are so fun and challenging in their own unique ways, right? Mm-hmm. And bring so much to the table depending on what is going on. But the with this Spartan race, so we went with 4 people that we had chosen our team, but then they assigned a team captain to us that we had never met ahead of time. And then we were there the week of the show from Monday through the first race was on Thursday. So that's all the time. We met our team captain on Monday. Mm-hmm. And so we had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to do everything we could to try to communicate and get to know this person, team building and stuff like that. Yeah. And then we competed Thursday and Saturday. And then some people competed Friday. We competed Thursday and Saturday. But we found out Wednesday what we were even doing. We didn't know what the events were going to be. And so we were literally in our hotel room, like laying on the floor and like mapping everything out and who's going to climb over who and how are we going to carry stuff? Who do we shove up and push up, and the whole race. I mean, you can go watch it on, still it's on Amazon Prime. Sadly, it's not free. I think you can probably Google it too. We were Team Heart of Texas. We had these little yellow shirts. We joked that we looked like bumblebees because we were like yellow shirts and black pants. But anyway, the team, the effort that had to go into that is absolutely why we did as well as we did, because it was that communication and that planning and executing of who's going to do what.
I remember it was like a muddy wall that you had to basically stack people on top of, and like one person had to climb up another person and then create the next layer of that stack, and it blew. I mean, the other teams just had no comprehension of how to do it, and you guys, that was one of the moments where you guys caught up with teams and that was
the very last thing. It was called the slip wall, and you're all wet and muddy, and it was like this slanted, really tall, I can't remember how high wall, and we had to get all of us up and over it. Yeah. And so you had to strategize, who do you get up to the top, who can start reaching down and grabbing other people, and who do you stack, and who can jump at the end the highest to grab onto the shoes. And it was pretty fun and dramatic for sure.
I love it. So I did a Spartan race in North Carolina, and they had one of those walls. Yeah. And I got to the top with a couple of people, and then we just started somebody grabbed my feet, and I was hanging straight down. Yes. And trusting this person wouldn't let go, and I was pulling people up, and it was just, and you would see people come running, and you could just see oh my God, what am I supposed to do? And we'd be like, we got you. Just pull them up. And it's like, there's nothing more special than those, that's what I think. And, I interviewed a elite obstacle race guy that was, Scotty, who was talking about that. Like, one of the things he loves about races is not just the competitive nature, but how it brings people together. 100%. And I think team competitions like you've been doing with whether it's Spartan or Camp Gladiator really bring those aspects out.
For sure. I say sweating together is kind of like bleeding together. Like you just, and sometimes you do end up bleeding together in these races, but there's something so special about these shared experiences and the level it takes you to physically and emotionally. And it's so relatable to so many other areas of life. Like if I can just hang on a little bit longer, if I can just help this other person, push them and help them make their goals, and just that camaraderie of both being pushed and challenging somebody else, that iron sharpens iron thing, so.
Yeah. And I think, some people are like just have to do it by themselves, right? Like they're just wired that way. Like they're an individual athlete. They're solo in the way they think and do things. And there's other people that really thrive in team environments. And I think if you're one of those people, then maybe as you're listening to this, look for events where you can team up, where you can participate, with other people and build them up, bring them with you. And you can be that person for them sometimes, and they can be that person for you sometimes. So talk to a mom who's listening, who needs to kind of take that courageous step that you took, and talk to them about like how it's been for you, but also just like how important that is for you as a mom to really show your kids.
For sure.
How important.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is,
This is the last question.
A lot of people talk about, how we need self-care. And I do think that it's really important that we do take care of ourselves. But I think of it like this, what I was talking about earlier, kind of if you have an empty cup that you're trying to pour from, it's a lot harder to give to anybody. If your cup is full, whether that is, emotionally, spiritually, or physically, you're going to have a lot more to give. And so for me, I have a whole different kind of energy when my body is physically in shape. And so when I'm training, when I'm working out, I have a different kind of energy afterwards to give to my family because I feel like I've already been filled. And then I can turn around and give to them, but also setting that example of like, okay, what does it look like now to be active and to be healthy in your own lifestyle? My kids don't think twice about just playing outside and running around and throwing balls and kicking and climbing and just doing all these things because it's just, they've been around it always.
Right.
And same with nutrition. Now, I mean, they're going to eat whatever, like crazy kid stuff that they want to eat, but we've had a lot of different health and food issues with my little ones. And so my youngest will read a label. He'll look at it and be like, Mom, this only has this many grams of sugar. Can I have this? But I just think there's always teaching moments. Yeah. And so taking every opportunity, including in our health and wellness journey, to model for our kids. So for the mom who's on the fence of like, do I do this? How do I make it happen? Just prioritizing, whether it be in a group fitness thing, whether you go to a gym and drop them off in childcare, whether you go early in the morning while they're still asleep, whether you fit it in while they're at school during the day, making the space is what I call it, like making the space for the things that are important and then prioritizing those things just is the only way that it can happen.
Yeah.
So I think we prioritize the things that are important to us. And if it's important enough, you figure out how to make it work and what you can kind of shift around. There's always a way. And if you need some ideas, come to me.
Yeah, and that's my last question is how can people find you and reach out to you for support?
I do love helping other friends figure out how to make it work, because I think that sometimes we just feel bogged down in whatever we're doing. We feel kind of stuck. And so it's like, okay, just scoot everything aside and figure out, okay, if I shifted this here or I moved that here or prioritized this differently, sometimes we don't realize how much time we actually spend either doing nothing or doing something that isn't very valuable. Mm-hmm. And so whether it's wanting to read more, whether it's wanting to eat healthier, whether it's wanting to exercise, or whatever the thing is that you want to make more space for, looking at your grid of your life and going, okay, what could I shift around or prioritize differently? Usually you can find some space.
Yeah.
So
if somebody wanted to get assistance from you,
yeah.
How would they reach out? What's the way to connect with you and engage with you?
So I actually don't have a website up yet for my business that I'm hoping to be launching soon here. But I mean, I am on social media, just my name. So it's Cheryl with a Cheryl, and my last name is Carrell, spelled Carrell. So people can message me I check Messenger and on Instagram. They can shoot me a message there, and I can connect that way with people.
And I'll put that in the show notes to make it easy to find it.
That's great.
Well, thank you so much. I know
Thanks for having me.
We have to do a hard stop because she's heading downstairs, Hit Athletic. She's going to do a noon workout with Sean, sports conditioning, because she's all about her goals. So I love it. And what's the next thing coming up? You said you got CG Games Finals.
So CG Games Finals is the next thing. But actually, another really amazing gym in the area is for people who want to do Spartan training and obstacle course training is called Rebel Fitness, and it's up in Liberty Hill. My friend Regina just reached out to me asking if I was interested or knew anyone who was interested in a DECA race, which is another really fun race series that this guy Yancey has put on. And that's going to be in September. So I might end up doing that. That also.
So September, possibly a DECA challenge.
Possibly a DECA. Then the next thing is going to be CG Games in November. And the next weekend right after it is going to be another Hyrox.
Hyrox in Dallas, Texas.
Podium at the top. We'll see.
And so is it top 3 go on to the next level?
You qualify, and then you can decide if you want to go to the next race or not.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Okay.
And that CG Games competition she was talking about is actually happening November 12th. That's coming up this weekend. So lots of information on how she'll do will be in the show notes after the 12th. Really enjoyed her interview, her perspective, going from really just being, a mom of 4, in a lot of ways, kind of like an average American who needs to get healthy, to really just an absolute badass, an absolute, competitor in so many ways, lots of competitions across the country. It's inspiring because I think oftentimes we think of athletes as like people that are different from us. And I think she's an example of somebody who's put in the work. 10 years with Camp Gladiator, going to Hit Athletic, Eddie Esparza's gym there in kind of north central Austin. She's found a home not just with the people around her, but in the place of being such a high-level athlete. And so it's never too late for anybody. So if you're thinking about, man, what about me? What could I do that? I think the answer is obvious. Yes, you can. You got this. Thanks again for listening to the Mindset Forge podcast.